how do you maximize the income of the property that you already own? And furnishing it, for one, you are able to yield a higher income. But then secondly, the client base that you are putting into the property. We have found that we have different buckets of income in our business, and we find that the direct corporate will always pay more for the exact same piece of real estate than you might get from an individual coming in to rent it.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com. Hello and welcome to episode 364. If you've been listening long enough to this show, then you're already familiar with the concept of corporate and executive rental housing, in which the property owner provides furnished 30-day or longer stays to families and business travelers. My guest today is taking corporate housing a step further and franchise the concept. Angela Healy is the CEO and co-owner of AvenueWest, a national corporate housing provider, which was recently ranked as the 15th fastest growing real estate company in America by Inc. magazine. Angela, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Brian. I'm very excited to be on.
Tell us a little bit about you and how you got started in the real estate world.
When I was young and my parents had started out, they got their first rental property and eventually grew that to about 3 rental properties, of which they used the income to put all 4 children through private college. So I saw the value right away in how to multiply my income, not just working for a corporation, but also putting some money aside and having passive income as well. And so when I turned 25, I purchased my first piece of real estate and started renting that out shortly thereafter and have never looked back since.
And at what point, Angela, did you get into the corporate rentals?
In about 2000. So really saw the opportunity to take a look at how do you maximize the income of the property that you already own. And furnishing it, for one, you are able to yield a higher income. But then secondly, the client base that you are putting into the property. We have found that we have different buckets of income in our business, and we find that the direct corporate will always pay more for the exact same piece of real estate than you might get from an individual coming in to rent it.
When you talk about corporate rentals, what is that exactly?
So it's large corporations, so Fortune 100, Fortune 5,000 companies, Microsoft, a lot of tech companies use corporate housing, but also oil and gas, healthcare. There's plenty of industries that will use corporate housing to relocate their employees to a new area or bring people in on assignment where they're on assignment for maybe a 90-day period of time. So they don't want to stay in a hotel. They want to have better options as far as food. Can I cook my own meals? Do I have to eat out all the time? Or even have more space? I mean, a hotel room is maybe 300-400 square feet if you're lucky. And we're able to provide condos, townhomes, or even houses. So if a family's relocating and they have a dog or animals and they want to be able to have a backyard for them or for the children. So really providing a much larger breadth of opportunity for the corporations when they're relocating their employees.
Let's talk about how you are finding connections to these corporations that have corporate needs.
So we have a team. We are a franchise, as you mentioned. And so the national sales team is here at headquarters. So we have a team of people that do nothing but work on getting those corporations to book within our organization. So as kind of a one-stop shop. So if we're working with, say, Microsoft, for example, Microsoft does not want to call every single office to get the property that they need. They want a one-person contact. So they have one person that they work with here at headquarters that can book into every one of the markets that are currently franchised within our organization. And so we're completing those RFPs for our franchisees as one company, and then we're renting those properties no matter which city they're in.
So your company has the connections with corporations such as Microsoft, as an example, who will call you. How are you finding the properties that you can put the corporate travelers into, and what makes a good property for that type of traveler?
So that's where the franchising model really comes into play. We want someone local in the city that knows the area, knows everything about the city, and will find kind of those right properties. Now, we have specific criteria that we give to them, but then we work with them hand in hand in terms of finding the right properties in their area until they get comfortable with it. And then they start doing it on their own. In most states, you have to have a real estate license to manage other people's properties. And we're able to partner with property owners to put their program the way that we need it. It has to be furnished correctly. It has to have all the right pieces in terms of these TVs, this streaming cable or regular cable, or, all the pieces that it needs. So we have all of that information to provide to the property owner. We can either set the property up on their behalf, or if they already have it furnished, we can typically take their property as well.
So are you then doing like a sublease situation with the owner of that property?
So it's a management agreement, just like you would with a property manager for an unfurnished piece of property, where they're renting it and collecting the rent on your behalf, and then they are remitting the rent payment to you on a monthly basis. So it's that same kind of agreement. So when the property is rented, the property owner is receiving the rental income. When it is vacant, we all share in that vacancy.
What is the type of property that you typically need to identify for the corporate travelers? Are you looking at single family houses, apartments? What exactly do you look for?
So we're looking for residences that are either condos, townhomes, or single family homes. Before COVID, 75% of our inventory was one bedroom, whether it was a condo or a townhome, because typically the person was coming in on assignment and then they would fly home to the family unit over the weekend. So it was just the one person needing the property. What we found through COVID was that people were still traveling. They were just traveling as a family unit, as a core. So the need for more 3-bedroom homes started popping up, whereas our competition, they rent apartments and put people in with the apartment and the rental property in the rental furniture. They were having a hard time finding things that these post-COVID people really wanted in terms of the yards and the house. And so our inventory really took off during that time frame because we had those options available. And because we're working with individual property owners, we're able to be more flexible with regards to what we have and what we can offer versus being pigeonholed into what an apartment can or multifamily unit can offer.
Is there a difference for the traveler as whether it's a townhome or condo?
Really, it's just, is there outdoor space with the townhome? Because a lot of them have like a little backyard area, so you could have a small fenced in area. But the amenities in a condo are a big plus in terms of a lot of times they'll have pools or 24-hour security if there's a doorman, things like that will make a condo very attractive. The other thing is, too, a lot of condos are located in the downtown centers, which will make it very close to work. They could even walk to their office complex, which is very attractive to the corporation.
Let's go back to the need here that corporate travelers have. What is the need that you see out there for corporate travel? I mean, is it vast and there's not enough housing to accommodate it, or is it just enough for you to make a good amount of profit?
We are seeing a shortage in supply. A lot of that has to do with just the multifamily, the apartment complexes are filling up. Because interest rates are rising, the normal people who would leave the apartment and go purchase their first home, that really didn't happen this past year. So all the apartment complexes are filling up. And so the ability for our competition to be able to get in and get those apartments with this increased demand has really kind of decreased for them. So it's made a great opportunity for us because we just work with a lot of investors that have purchased these properties and added them to our program so that we can scale up, whereas our competition is having a harder time scaling up.
What is the demographic then of the corporate traveler? Is it the demographic and kind of like the price that they're willing to pay to stay in these accommodations?
In 2001, the average rental rate was like $4,061 a month for a one-bedroom property. So if you compare that to the unfurnished, and this is countrywide, it obviously varies by market, but the average rental rate for an unfurnished one bedroom was $1,065. So there's a real disparity between what you can get furnished and unfurnished. And we're finding that investors are really able to increase their income significantly by adding that furniture and providing the full package.
For the rental property owners listening to this, how do they tap into this market? How do they get started? What do they have to do to their property? And how do they actually make these connections so that corporate travelers will know that they can stay there?
Certainly, when it comes to kind of the real high-end corporation, they're really looking for companies like ours to be that middleman because Microsoft doesn't want, they probably have 5,000 units on average per day. So they don't want to have 5,000 different property owners that they're dealing with. So if you really want to get to the high-end corporation, you really want to come in with a company like ours where we can be that middleman for them. We can offer them several hundred units of what they're looking for and be one of their suppliers. If you are looking at doing it kind of on your own, there is a website called corporatehousingbyowner.com. where you can furnish your property and list it on their website for rental on a month-to-month basis. So a lot of people have gone there as well in terms of trying to do it on their own. You don't pay the management fee there in terms, you're paying a listing fee to list your property. But again, if you really want to get the top dollar for the property, you want to come in with a program like this.
What must one do to prepare their home for corporate travelers?
You're trying to get top dollar for the property. It has to be a top dollar presentation. So the furniture has to match. It has to be a cohesive feel when you come in. It has to be current, up to date. You don't want to have gold handles and gold hinges. You want to be looking at the current trends and really providing that top-notch property. We had a property in Raleigh, North Carolina, where we did a makeover on the property and did 4 times the income pre-makeover versus post-makeover because of what the changes that we had done to bring it to more of a current and make it more desirable of a property in today's market.
Can you give us other specific examples of transitioning a property to corporate rental?
We're doing one in St. Louis right now. It's a single family home in a very desirable area, right in the St. Charles area of St. Louis. And the home was original. It was built in the 80s, and if you can imagine it, flat doors, all the gold trim everywhere. We've redone the flooring. We redid both bathrooms. We even went as far as on the doors, adding trim to give it a trim package. So it wasn't just a flat door anymore, upgrading the windows and the kitchen, and then just putting a really nice furniture package in to provide everything that a family would need. The other thing that people are requesting these days is the need for an office inside the home. So do you have not just potentially a desk area anymore, but do you have a room that you can enclose so that if someone is on a Zoom call, they can, have the children still be out there, but close the door on that as well?
What's the average stay of a corporate traveler?
Corporate Housing Providers Association is our association. They put out statistics. So our average stay as an industry is 86 days. Our average stay in our inventory is 99 days. And I think that just has to do with the overall comfort level that people, when they come into something that feels more like a home, they tend to stay longer than something that feels a little more transient, like an apartment.
What kind of occupancy or vacancy do you usually encounter?
It also varies by market. Some of our hotter seasoned areas might have a little bit higher vacancy. But we ask on average for our investors to run the numbers with an 80% occupancy. We wouldn't bring a property into our program unless we felt we could rent it more than 80% of the time. So then anything we get over the 80% would then just be additional income in your scenario.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com.
If you're thinking of leaving your W-2 job and becoming a full-time real estate investor, one of the greatest costs you must consider is healthcare for you and your family. When I made this transition myself, I found the whole healthcare insurance process to be confusing and frustrating. That's why I'm glad I met Chad Creasy at RCB and Associates. Chad is a professional health insurance agent who helps real estate investors and small business owners understand and choose their best healthcare options. And best of all, his services are covered by the insurance company and won't cost you a dime. If you live in Michigan and are expecting a change in your healthcare insurance coverage for any reason, or losing employer coverage or transitioning into Medicare, then you owe it to yourself to contact Chad Creasy at rcbassociatesllc.com. Do you mind if we dig into the franchise model that you have?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm really curious how that works. I know you kind of touched on that a little bit in the beginning of our conversation, but if someone has one property, can they come to you and say, hey, let's turn this into a corporate rental? Do they have to have a whole portfolio? I mean, what are you looking for in someone that you might partner with or franchise with?
I own the Denver franchise in addition to owning the franchisor itself. And in Denver, we have about 100 properties, and I work with 96 owners. So in most cases, it's one property, one person. And that works just fine within our program. Or we can have, like St. Louis has someone that has 5 properties in their program. So it can really work either way. It just kind of depends on the individual investor and how they want to get started, whether they have some unfurnished and they want to diversify their portfolio a little bit and have some furnished and some unfurnished, or whether they want to kind of go all in and have them all furnished. So either way works.
Bring us through that process. Let's say I have a single family house that might be perfect for corporate rental, close to downtown. I call you up and say, hey, let's do this. Do I have to become a franchisee, or do I just become a partner? How does that work exactly?
Right. So you're just an individual property owner that's within that franchisee's program. So you don't become a franchisee unless you want to manage other people's properties and get and run kind of that whole city for yourself. You know, some of the larger cities we break, like Denver has Denver and Denver South because it's a larger city. But some of our other cities like Colorado Springs or Tucson, it's just one franchise for that city. So we're just kind of looking for the right person in each city across the U.S. to become a franchisee.
That franchisee would either have their own portfolio or they'd be managing a portfolio of multiple properties that are individually owned by other entities or people.
That is correct.
What is the profit share? I mean, who gets what when it comes to that average $4,600 a month in income that can be generated?
So we do look at everything individually, but on average, it's a 70-30 rental split. So the 70% goes to the property owner and the 30% stays to the franchisee.
The franchisee gets that 30%, the property owner gets that 70%. Where do you get paid? Where does your company get paid then?
There's a $45,000 initial franchise fee when you want to purchase a particular city. And then there's a 1% of rent royalty fee. And then a 0.5% of rent, it goes into the National Marketing Fund. And then we have a technology fee that's $50 per unit per month.
If I'm doing my math correctly, that 30% that the franchisee keeps, and by the way, I'm asking you this because I'm interested myself here, that 30% that the franchisee keeps, it sounds like maybe 5% of that is going in your direction?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I'd have to grab my calculator real quick to do the math, but it's easier to do it based on top line revenue because everybody knows what their top line revenue is immediately. And they can think better that way in terms of, okay, then what are my fees going to be? So we originally did it on that 30%. We had the franchise fee based off that 30%. And it was just too confusing and complicated for some people. So we just switched the model to be a top line revenue.
For that, you are funneling these corporate travelers to the franchisees. You're bringing them those corporate renters directly. Are you also taking a cut from the corporation that might be paying you to place those people?
It depends on the situation, but yes, because the national sales team is here and I do have to pay them, there is a small piece that's coming to us for that, but we are renting the property from the franchise at the rate that they're advertising the rate.
How long have you been doing this and what are you noticing? Like what's been successful for you? What's your secret to success in this industry?
As an entity, we've been in business since 1999. Started here in Denver and really found that the model was very successful in that we saw a lot of our competition go out of business during recessions because they're renting apartments and subletting them. They have to have a tenant. And so when the economy starts to soften and they lose some of their tenants, they were left holding too much liability. And so we see a lot of our competition go out of business during slower periods, including during COVID. One of the 5 largest companies in the corporate housing space went out of business. And so we knew that our model was very solid. And in order to work with the larger corporations, we couldn't just be in Denver. We needed to be all over the United States. And that was when the franchising model idea came out, because we tried to expand ourselves without the franchise model. And what we were missing was that local ownership on the ground. That is really key because property has to be perfect every time a new tenant walks in the door. It has to be fully clean. It can't be hair in the sink. Everything about it has to be 100% perfect when a corporation is coming in. And that local ownership on the ground, they were taking pride in their inventory and saying, yes, I'm going to make sure this is perfect because I know that this corporation that we're putting in here is very valuable to the overall organization. But not even that. They don't just view this guest as important. They view all their guests as important. They really want everyone to have that same experience, no matter what company they're coming from. And that pride of ownership is what we're trying to really franchise. We want everyone that comes into that organization to have that same pride of ownership so that we're able to give the same experience no matter where someone is countrywide.
The differentiator then during COVID that's kept you in business while others have faltered, is it the franchising? Is it the type of property? Find it one more time. What is that's keeping you strong during these down times?
Because we are sharing the rent with the investment owner, the property owner, we don't have to pay out rent when the property is not occupied. So certainly when COVID first hit, everyone was giving us their 30-day notices. And so we could see 30 days in advance that, okay, we're getting a little bit vacant. But that also gave us the opportunity to shift our model because we have more houses and because we have, different inventory. When people started coming out of the core hotspots saying, okay, I don't want to leave my family in New York or LA. I want to take my family to a place that is safer. We were able to house those people. So we weren't housing Microsoft at that point. We were housing all of their executives that wanted to get out of the hotspots, but we were just renting to them individually. So we were able to adapt during that time frame and keep a lot of our properties occupied, even though, it seemed like everything was going away. It really wasn't.
The fact that there's a lot more remote work from home, are you seeing a lot more of this flexible corporate travel where people, executives can take their family to a completely different city on their company's dime?
And we're seeing them say, oh, we really like your product. where else are you located? And so they're hopping from city to city, just enjoying, and the children are getting great educations. They're learning all about these different cities that they're living in. And yeah, just being able to adapt to what we're seeing, that it's been really wonderful.
It seems like the franchisee can go out and cherry pick the best properties, the best rental properties in town, because they can make an argument to the owner that, hey, we're going to boost your income 2 to 3 times. Sure, there'll be a little bit more vacancy, but the income is going to be a lot greater.
That is absolutely the case. And that's really what we're trying to do, because not every property works for corporate. I mean, you could have the most beautiful property in just the wrong area and we can't rent it. So we really are looking for those perfect, it's like, 1% of the properties out there, we're looking for those. And we're able to make those investors more money than they would unfurnished.
What about the investment up front? Is that on the owner's part, like to fix up the unit, furnish it, that type of thing? Is it the owner that's going to cover that?
It is.
And do you have someone like a quality control person who flies out and looks at the property to make sure it's right?
Well, we want the local franchisee to do that. We obviously give them all the training here when they're in Denver for their training. And obviously we have ongoing training from there. And we also, as a group, we get together once a week for an hour, all the franchisees on a Zoom call. And we talk about best practices. What are we seeing? What's making a good rental? What isn't? And like during COVID, when all of this started happening and we saw the shift where the executives were asking for the properties instead of the corporations directly, we were able to make that switch within a week because we were all on that call and able to adapt very quickly to what we were seeing.
From your perspective, how do you know what market to go into? Is it the demand coming from the corporations? They're saying, hey, we need some housing in this city and this city. Or are you waiting for franchisees to call you and say, hey, come to Ohio, I've got some properties here? I mean, how do you make that decision?
Historically, it has been, we have a good potential franchisee in this market, so we're going to open this location. The change that we're making right now with the national sales team is that we're starting to see pockets of where we need to be. And so we're about in 2023, we're going to start making an effort in terms of saying, okay, right now we have $1 million worth of business that's going into Irvine, California. So we need to actively go out and try to find the franchisee for that location. So it's definitely going to be a switch for us this coming year, because the demand from the corporations is starting to drive that. But every city, as long as it has a population of close to 1 million people, if it doesn't have 1 million people, then it has some other business hub, meaning a university that really drives innovation, or a military base that's there, something else that will drive that corporate travel there. We're able to make those cities work as well. So if you're listening to this and you're in a smaller city, that doesn't mean that you wouldn't be a good franchisee. You absolutely would be, because corporate housing is used nationwide.
Tell people how they can get a hold of you or find out more about your company. Kind of wrap up the pitch here. What should be the takeaway from this conversation?
If you are an investor and you have a portfolio of properties, it's always good to diversify. So just like you diversify between stocks and bonds, whether it's tech stocks or, blue chip stocks, you want to diversify your real estate portfolio as well. And one of the ways of doing that is to have some furnished properties and some unfurnished properties. If you are interested in expanding your portfolio beyond your personal reach, doing our franchise model is a way for you to do that, because you're going to be managing other people's properties and making a percentage of the rent on those properties as well. So it's a way for you to really expand. And it doesn't take a lot of properties to make a franchise successful. Our target is to get our franchises to 30 properties in the first 3 years. So it's not like an unfurnished property management where you're only making 8 to 12% of that $1,100. You're making a much higher income per property per month. So it doesn't take as many properties to get you to that number that makes a nice lifestyle.
Where can people go to find out more about you?
Our website is AvenueWest.com. And my email is angela@avenuewest.com, or you can call us at 303-825-0000.
Thanks so much for coming on the show and talking about not just corporate housing, but your franchise model, which I find very compelling, and we'll definitely be talking more about it here offline. But I've really enjoyed our conversation, and thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Brian. I really appreciate it.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's higinvestor.com. And you can also ask questions and join us on Facebook by going to RPOA, Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast. This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.